the right somatosensory cortex reduces the intensity of the feeling generated by the music. Then there's double dissociation between cognitive and emotional empathy, described as damage to the ventral medial prefrontal cortex was associated with lower levels of cognitive empathy and damage to the damage to the inferior frontal gyrus was associated with the lower levels of emotional empathy. Then there's double dissociation, cognition, and declarative knowledge, described as focal amygdala damage, impaired condition, autonomic response, but not declarative memory for the relationship between the conditioned and unconditioned stimulus. Focal hippocampal damage impaired the memory but not the conditioned response. And disassociation between expressing emotion and feeling emotion. A patient with a small lesion was described as a patient with a small lesion to the cerebral and brainstem presented with pathological crying and laughter in the absence of triggering stimulus and without necessary feeling either sad or happy. Feinstein concludes that some lesions evidence suggests a certain degree of specificity in regards to fear and the amygdala. Other evidence highlights the distributed nature of emotional processing, with multiple pathways and built-in redundancy allowing for maximal adaptation and reliance in the fact of brain injury. Ramachandran brings the conversation back to Willie and Ruth. Their strange behavior implies the existence of a laughter circuit found mainly in portions of the limbic system and targets the frontal lobe. Given the well-known role of the limbic system in producing an orienting response to the potential threat or alarm, is not altogether surprising. Perhaps that is also involved in the aborted orientation reaction in response to false alarm laughter. Some parts of the circuit handle emotions, the feelings of merriment that accompanies laughter, whereas other parts are involved in the physical act itself, but at present we do not know which parts are doing what. Ramachandran touches upon another neurological disorder called pain asymovia, which has offered additional hints about neurological structures underlying laughter. Patients with this condition do not register pain when they are deliberately jabbed in the finger with a sharp needle. Apparently, they do not experience the adverse emotional impact of pain. Ramachandran has noticed that many of these patients actually start giggling, as if they were being tickled. Ramachandran gives the example of his recent examination of a school teacher in a hospital in Madras, India, who told him that a pinprick administered as part of a routine neurology workup felt incredibly funny, and she could not explain why. In an article that I found entitled "When Illusions Become Reality," Peterson and Newport propose the purpose of pain is to alert us to a threatening or damaging stimuli, be it potential or current, and simultaneously to move us to a place of safety. In order for a perceptive mechanism to work effectively, requires integration between the sensory discriminative component of pain and the evaluative affective motivational component. When one of these is compromised, pain may become an inert sensation with loss of its warning quality. People with this syndrome perceive the location and nature of the pain stimulus but not interpret it as threatening. They actually laugh at the experience. So this is similar to what people with pain agnosia are experiencing. They experience this disassociation as Newport and Peterson are describing, which is controversially when the sensory discriminative component is lost and painful stimuli are not detected as in cognitive analgesia. Life-threatening damage can be inflicted without pain ever being experienced, which is another similar syndrome that the person can no longer feel the pain stimulus to themselves as threatening at all. Ramachandran became increasingly interested in pain asymbolia, mainly because it provides additional support for the evolutionary theory of laughter that he has proposed. This syndrome is often seen when there is damage to a structure called the insular cortex, which is buried in the fold between the parietal and temporal lobe, and is closely to the structures where we saw damage in Willie and Ruth. The insular cortex receives sensory input, including pain, from the skin and internal organs, and sends its output to parts of the limbic system, such as the cingulate gyrus, so that one begins to experience strong adverse reaction, agony of pain. Ramachandran then asks the reader to imagine what would happen if the damage were to disconnect the insular cortex from the cingulate gyrus. The insular cortex tells the person that something is painful, a potential threat. The cingulate gyrus of the limbic system, a fraction of a second layer, tells the person not to worry and that the pain is not a threat. Just as Ramachandran proposed evolutionary theory of laughter would predict, the two key ingredients of threat then followed by deflation are presented, and the only way for the patient to resolve the paradox is to laugh. Ramachandran uses this same line of thinking to explain why people laugh when tickled. You approach a child, hand stretched out menacingly. The child wonders, will he hurt me, or shake me, or poke me? But no, your fingers make light, intimate contact with her belly. Again, the recipe, threat followed by deflation, is present, and the child laughs, as if to inform other children he doesn't mean to harm, he's only playing. This may help children practice the kind of mental play required for adult humor. In other words, what we call sophisticated cognitive humor has the same logic form as tickling, and therefore piggybacks on the same natural circuit, and the threatening but harmless detector that involves the insular cortex. cingulate gyrus, and other parts of the limbic system. Thank you very much, and I'll see you Thursday.